Hi, welcome to Loft 801. My name is Diego, and today I'm talking about the latest Blumhouse movie released on March 8th, 2024, Imaginary. It's a horror movie following Jessica and her stepfamily as they move into her childhood home. The youngest stepdaughter, Alice, finds a stuffed bear named Chauncey, and it quickly becomes clear that Chauncey is more than just a stuffed bear. Now, before I hop into my review, if you want to support the channel, then please take a second to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you, I appreciate it. As a warning, this review will contain some heavy spoilers, so please continue at your own risk. Lastly, if there's something that you want to see reviewed, don't forget to let me know by leaving a comment and I will do my best to get to it. Thank you. I'm hopping in 3, 2, 1. I'm going to give you some context on the family dynamic because that's something I think had the potential to be great, but it kind of missed the mark. Like I said, Jessica moves into her childhood home with her husband Max and his two daughters, Taylor and Alice. Taylor is the older daughter, and boy, she is a nightmare. I understand that teenagers are supposed to be argumentative and angsty, but man, she is just a Jessica is a very kind stepmom and does her best to get along with Alice and Taylor, but Taylor just comes for her throat left and right and for no valid reason. She's just an awful character and she's very hard to relate with, especially when her personality changes in the last quarter of the film. It feels very 180, unnatural, and unearned. Complaints aside, Tegan Burns portrays Taylor very well because obviously I'm very upset with her character. While I said Jessica's a good stepmom, I also want to make it clear that her character is written very strangely. At least her dialogue is. Anytime she's talking with her kids, she comes off as pretentious and preachy. She's very much holier than thou, and it makes it hard to relate to her. Jeff Ludlow, please give me a character with more humanistic flaws in your next movie. Wanda-wise, acting-wise, no pun intended, does a good job. She plays the calm, soothing, and emotional stepmom very well, despite her character feeling a little weird. I think Alice is the star of the movie, which for me says a lot. I think child actors are typically annoying with the portrayal of their characters, but I did not think that with Piper Braun. She does a great job of showing loneliness, fear, and courage on her face. I was very impressed with her emotional range and felt concerned for her when she was crying and screaming. Not just that, but the closer she got with Chauncey, the creepier she became, and I didn't feel like it was forced acting. Piper's acting and Alice's character writing in this movie are great and exactly what I was hoping to see in this movie. Max is a nobody. I'm not even going to bother talking about him because he's not in the movie. Lastly, Gloria is the other significant character in this movie. She's the kooky, creepy, weird old lady that's lived in the neighborhood for decades. Gloria is portrayed by Betty Buckley, and she does a wonderful job with the acting, but her character feels forced. The movie purposely tries to confuse you and hide Gloria's intentions. She's helpful to Jessica and her family, but it feels very left field and out of place because she is literally a creep. Her vibes are 100% off. I believe Wadlow is a competent director, but for this movie, his characters lacked a sense of direction and focus. Outside of Alice, the characters didn't feel very realistic. While I rooted for their success, I wasn't emotionally connected to Jessica, Taylor, or Gloria. At its core, Imaginary is an interesting blend of concepts. It explores themes of trauma, coping mechanisms, and the power of imagination. Unfortunately, some of these things blend in very cliche ways. For example, Alice's imaginary friend Chauncey is the focal point of the narrative. Chauncey serves as the catalyst for all the supernatural occurrences within the house. This could have been a very interesting concept, but the problem is this movie doesn't capitalize on the creativity imagination allows. At least, not throughout most of the movie. Instead, what we get is a familiar tale we've seen many times before. An inanimate object that has some sort of demonic or supernatural presence tied to it. Chucky, Annabelle, Megan, Mandy, the boy. It's a trope that we've seen a lot, especially over the last 10 years. Now, in the last quarter of the movie, it executed some of the imaginary stuff really well. Jessica and her daughters face climactic trials in the imaginary universe. I loved the imaginary universe. It had strong and striking visual elements that introduced a sense of dread and wonder. The checkered floors and effective use of horror elements with Chauncey worked really well. I loved the practical effects used to bring Chauncey to life. He looked like a demented version of a teddy bear generated by AI. I mean that in the absolute best of ways. While I genuinely enjoyed the imaginary world, I have to remind myself that it was only in the final act. I also have to remind myself that this movie ended in a very cliche and unnecessary way. It's a bit of a slap to the face because it tried tries to set up an imaginary cinematic universe by teasing the monsters of other children. While this movie has enjoyable moments, it certainly doesn't feel like a sequel is deserved. Before I wrap up my review, I do want to say that the soundtrack and sound design were good. There wasn't anything remarkable about them, but they helped create a sinister ambience when needed. They also helped create some emotional depth in the movie for personal moments with Jessica and Alice. Outside of the imaginary world, the production design wasn't impressive. It was your standard run-of-the-mill horror movie production design. Here's a creepy old house, and we're not going to film anywhere else outside of this house. It's a good production practice, but it's overused and feels cheap. Going hand in hand with the production design, the cinematography also was not impressive outside of the imaginary world. There weren't any shots that stood out to me. Again, everything felt standard to what I've come to expect from modern horror movies. I wasn't impressed with Imaginary, but I also wasn't disappointed. The movie was exactly what I expected to see. DeWanda Wise, Tegan Burns, and Betty Buckley all have good performances in this movie, but they aren't given good roles to work with. Due to writing and dialogue, their characters come off very unrealistic and the relationships feel forced. On the other hand, Piper Braun plays Alice and her character was great. I was impressed with Braun's emotional acting and hope she grows up to have a wonderful career. Story-wise, the movie was very predictable and cliché. A family moves into a spooky childhood home, bad things start happening, and characters act silly. The film has interesting themes of trauma and imagination, but it doesn't utilize them very well. Instead, it heavily relies on familiar horror tropes and jump scares. For me, the best part of this movie was the imaginary world. The movie hits its stride in the imaginary world with striking and sinister visuals, but unfortunately, this is all in the final act. It would have been nice to experience the imaginary world prior to the final act and throughout the movie. The soundtrack, sound design, production design, and cinematography are all effective, but not remarkable. They get the job done, and that's about it. Overall, Imaginary has some great moments, some good moments, lots of decent moments, and a few bad moments. Given my expectations, this movie did enough for me to enjoy it. It's not a horror movie I'd watch again, but I also feel okay recommending it to certain people. If you're new to horror and don't want nightmare fuel, then give this movie a shot. It'll be a good foot in the door for creepier movies. Thank you for listening to my review of Imaginary. If you enjoyed the content and want to support the channel, then please take a second to like and subscribe. If you did not enjoy the content, thank you for sticking around. As always, I would love to read what you have to say, so leave a comment and let me know what you're thinking. Also, if you want me to review something, don't forget to let me know and I will do my best to get to it. Lastly, if you want to see some more from me, then you can check out my vlogs linked up above or my podcast, Good Friends. Again, thank you for watching. My name is Diego and I will see you next time.